Hey, what's up? This is San Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. It was ready for some fighting words. In this video, I want to talk about Stephen Fulton. I had previously done a video about Inoue and just some more thoughts on the fight. The main concern with Inoue was basically how has he healed up and would his power translate to a higher weight class. So that's the video on Inoue. It's currently out there. I think I'll put the link also in the bio. And it's either going to be up here or up here. But that's Inoue. This video is going to be about Stephen Fulton and just some more thoughts about it because, you know, when I think about Inoue having, you know, his full power or full potential or power increasing just due to, you know, more mass in his body, bigger size, how does Stephen Fulton deal with that? Well, one, it's his weight class. So he's going to deal with it the way he's been dealing with everybody else. It's his weight class. So it's not going to be unfamiliar territory to him. There's the thing. If you box, whether you hit hard or not, you run across people who hit hard. So it's never going to be like, oh, it's my first time. I've never run across somebody who does this. No, the beautiful thing about the amateurs is it truly prepares you for, you know, the big leagues, the pros. You've run across power punchers. You've run across fast guys. You run across guys who are just super determined and they're not going to stop. They're not going to give up. Their will and determination are unbreakable. You run across guys just like that, and you have to adjust. And the one thing about Stephen Fulton is he's great at adjusting. He adjusts to the individual that he's facing. And he said it several times in past interviews, including the one he did with Mike Tyson, in which case he said, you know, whatever my opponent brings to the table, I'll do that. I'll meet him there. So if he wants to sit in a pocket, I'll meet him in the pocket. If he wants to have a boxing contest and we can see who's a better boxer and who's going to win on points, I'll do that. You know, whatever that thing is you want to do. If you want to just attack body, let's both attack the body. I'll do that. You want a point fight? I'll point fight. You want a pot shot? I'll pot shot. I'll do it however you want to do it. You want to have an alley fight? I'm more than happy to meet you in the alley. Whatever you want to do, we can do that. And he is great at meshing with other styles. Here's the thing about guys who don't hit very hard. They either have to have one or two particular qualities. It works even better when they have both, but three qualities: great defense, an ability to be a true dance partner in terms of adapting to what's coming at them, or superior speed. Stephen Fulton, I feel like, has a mixture of all three. I feel like he is a master of adapting to styles, which would serve him very well with Inoue. And it served him with several other people. You know, of course, people are going to make the arguments with the Figueroa fight and things of that nature. You know, Figueroa is saying that I hurt you at least 5 times in a fight. I don't know about 5 times. There's definitely 2 times that he hurt him. But it's neither here nor there. Okay, if you hurt somebody and you visibly see that they're hurt and you cannot get them out of there, that's your fault. That's your fault. You got him to that place, but you couldn't get him over the cliff. That's your fault. That's your inability to finish. It's not his inability to defend or anything like that. That's your fault. So, if anything, I still have to give Stephen Fulton credit, because if Figueroa did get him hurt, and you can at least count 5 times in which case you got him hurt, how come you could not finish? How come you couldn't seal the deal? That's a you thing, and you have to live with the consequences that you couldn't put the stamp on it, whether you like it or not. You couldn't put the stamp on it. So we have to credit, you know, Stephen Fulton with he's a tough, durable guy. He's going to be I think he'll probably be the not tougher, but more durable guy facing Inoue. He's naturally the bigger guy, so yeah, he's going to be the tougher guy. In terms of durability, I want to be clear on that. Not to mention he's been fighting at this weight. He's not just now coming up. He's been at this weight. So it's not going to be anything new to him to take on somebody else. And quite frankly, who knows? Inoue might actually hit at the power level of some of his previous opponents, Stephen Fulton. So, the power is a factor, and whether you like him or not, or whether you like me or not, saying that, because I had a few people who didn't particularly care that I was bringing up Inoue's power translating at a higher weight. And I don't understand why not, because it is a factor, and it's probably one of the biggest factors pertaining to Inoue. I think it matters to him. I also think it matters to Stephen Fulton if Inoue has true power or not. I think it matters to both guys. So for people to, say where you're making way more, you're putting way more emphasis on this power than need be. Well, that power could either win or the lack of power could lose the fight for either guy. So it matters. That's that. Now, speed. I've said several times I think Inoue is going to be faster. But I think that's, when I say faster, I think it's overall faster. Meaning he's got fast hands. He also has fast feet. He's quick with his head as well, his head movement. He's a very, jittery fighter. Kind of got that Manny Pacquiao thing where he breaks cadence a lot. But when I look at Stephen Fulton, he may not be faster. I think they might have possibly the same hand speed, possibly. I'm leaning more toward it anyway, but I could see, in terms of combinations, Stephen Fulton can put his hands together like it's nobody's business. Anyway, you will see combinations, but you don't see him in every sequence. Why? Because he's a power puncher. He doesn't have to put himself out there any longer than he needs to. One punch could be the equivalent of 2 or 3 for somebody else. So he doesn't really need to. Stephen Fulton, on the other hand, does need to. And I think that's one of the factors in this fight for Stephen Fulton, that he fights in combinations. And listen, this fight could very well go the distance, the same way it could end in a knockout. But it very well could go to a distance, because let's just say that Figueroa was right and he had Stephen Fulton hurt 5 times. Well, okay, we know that he's a tough, durable guy who will not be stopped or will not be slowed down in his pursuit for greatness. And I suppose, obviously, that same spirit dwells within him. So obviously, and this is the biggest fight of his career, bar none. So yeah, it means a lot. Not to mention when you walk into that arena and everybody's screaming for Inoue and nobody's screaming for you. Now, I would say as a sidebar that the Japanese fans have embraced Stephen Fulton. And that's due largely just because of the culture over there. It's a very respectable culture. But on top of that, one thing that the Japanese culture does very well, that American, I just have to be honest, America, period, doesn't do, is it honors its warriors. That's something that the Japanese do that Americans will not do. If they hate you, they're going to boo you. If you lose, you might get beer thrown on you as you're walking back into the dressing room after your loss. As if you didn't feel bad enough. Now you got beers, all over you. Popcorn sitting on your head or whatever the case may be. And I've seen that, but the Japanese fans won't do that. No, it's a very honorable culture and society. And what they truly honor is warriors. So it doesn't surprise me that Stephen Fulton has been getting the treatment that he's been getting. I will say one thing. Stephen Fulton looks a little thick. He looks a little big. And I'm curious to know what his conditioning was. Like, he doesn't, looking at his physique, he's never struck me as somebody who does a lot of weight training. But as I saw him, he looked a little bigger than usual. And I'm just curious if he was doing some weight training or if he was doing heavy weight training. He does look like solid. He looks like very solid. And I'm not talking about weight cutting or anything like that. I just mean he looks solid. Like he's been hitting the gym. So I'm curious about that. But when I look at this fight, let me go back to this. When I look at this fight, I think the factors for Stephen Fulton is, number one, he fights in combinations. And, I don't think Inoue hasn't fought anybody who fights in combinations the way Stephen Fulton does. He's extremely fluid with his hands once he gets going with combinations. And he has that dog in him. Philly is all the way in his mind, heart, and spirit. So he's got that dog in him. And tactically, if I could tell him anything, I would say close the distance and close the distance very quickly. So when I was speaking about Inoue, I felt as if he could keep a bit of distance so he could get full extensions on his punches, I think that would make a world of difference. And he could stay in the outside and make it more of a cleaner fight. When I look at Stephen Fulton, because of the combinations, so here's the thing. Stephen Fulton's a very slick guy. He's very slippery. So he can be in front of you, but it's still going to be hard for you to, touch him. He's just going to be rolling with a lot of things. He's just going to be doing all these numbers while firing back. So he's touching you, but you won't be touching him. You won't be touching him cleanly. So it can be very frustrating, but also to know that you just did all that you did, and he actually got better of it. He got the better of you in your own exchange on him. That can be frustrating. Also, just like I said, very fluid with his hands and the combinations. That can be frustrating. Also, just him being slippery. That's frustrating because it makes you hesitant to punch. It makes you second guess yourself. And you just get to this place where it's like, well, but if I do this, he's probably going to hit me again with that right hand. So I don't necessarily know if I want to try that again. I recently saw Sean Porter, and he was talking about Earl Spence in their fight, and he said, I got hit with 3 right hands. And he's like, I got to do something about that right hand. But by him focusing so much on I think it was the hook, the right hook. By him focusing so much on that right hook, he got hit with something else. And I can see Stephen Fulton doing that, in this fight with Inoue, because he does fight from weird angles, and he doesn't mind, getting low and still throwing uppercuts. And typically when you throw an uppercut, you might dip to the side to get some leverage or something like that, but not many people are actually going to dig up under you. That's something for a Mike Tyson, because he was a lot shorter than all the other heavyweights at that time. So who knows but that's one of the things that I would tell him tactically. I would say definitely the full on combinations. That's going to be something, because Inoue, he hits hard. However, just so he knows, when you come in here with that one bomb, there's 5 coming back at you. Mental. This is also mental warfare. So that's one thing. Also, the slipperiness. Inoue hasn't fought, a huge amount of American fighters, and that's something you have to get experience with fighting. One of the reasons why fighters from the UK find it a little difficult to fight guys in America, or anybody fighting anybody in America, especially Black Americans, is because we're slippery. We're not gonna stand still. There's that machismo thing for what? Again, we are a generation raised on Floyd Mayweather. We're not gonna stand still. It's defense first. Okay, defense first. We're not gonna stand still. I'm sorry. The days of rock'em sock'em robots and I'll take your best and you take my best and we'll see who's standing in the end. Those days are over, especially for American fighters. You don't see a whole lot of American fighters standing still. And he is now fighting Inoue. It's now fighting the best of the best of the best in American fighters in this weight. He's not going to stand still. He's going to be very, very slippery. And I think that's where the angles of Inoue is going to have to come in. But I think that's going to work for Stephen Fulton, just being slippery. Now, the only downside to Stephen Fulton is, and I've said this in previous videos, he does have a mean streak. And every Philly fighter has a mean streak. Every Philly fighter has a mean streak. If anything they need to be working on in the gym is how to stay calm and breathe and look at the long game and focus on, you got 4 more rounds. Cool down, chill out, bro. You got 4 more rounds. No, Philly fighters are mean, they're aggressive, and if you hit him with something, he wants to immediately get that hit back. That's the only thing, and that's one of the biggest things that I continually have seen with him as I've watched, his fights again and again. He's got a mean streak. And he has that thing where he's got this chip on his shoulder where everybody's always counting me out. So I have to do, exceedingly well because I'm always counted out. And, there's a lot of fighters who have that. And ironically, there's a lot of Philly fighters who've come out with that same mindset. I don't know what they're telling these people in this gym. Like, you're from Philly, they're not going to give you a decision. I don't know what they're telling these guys, these kids. But a lot of Philly fighters have that, which is ironic. But this is going to be an interesting fight. I mean, just like I said, I said this in an Inoue video, and I'll say it again. I think tactically, this and skill-wise, this is the most skillful fight we are going to see. This fight is a more skillful fight than Spence versus Bud. This is the most skillful fight that we're going to see. Hands down. I'm sorry. Hands down. This is the most skillful fight that we're going to see. It has every type of component because this is one of those fights where both guys are good at all ranges. There is a level of danger because Inoue possesses a lot of power. But the skill factor with both of them, they're both so decorated. I mean, there's a lot going on in this fight. There's a lot going on in this fight. There's a lot to look forward to in this fight. I'm curious to see who's going to be the aggressor. There's just things like that. I want to know who's going to lead this dance. I want to know who's going to be better at distance. Because although I said I think personally and tactically Inoue should be at distance to get the best out of all his movement, to get the best out of his footwork, to get the best out of his speed, to get the best out of his power. But then again, I look at Stephen Fulton, man, he can throw this combination. I look at Stephen Fulton, he's just a slippery dude. I look at Stephen Fulton, he's so cocky, not cocky, confident. And he's got that chip on his shoulder. When you walk around and you feel like everybody believes you're going to lose anyway, you really want to prove them wrong. So he's got a lot of things also. I don't know. I really don't know. So this is going to be interesting. I keep talking about how Inoue's power is going to translate, but I wonder how he's going to translate in terms of getting hit back. That's also a factor as well that hasn't been touched on. How are you going to take getting hit now that you're at this weight? That's also a factor as well, and we need to think about that as well and talk about that as well. So there's just a lot of things going on in this fight. Overall, I'm super excited for this fight. I think this is possibly, if it goes the distance, I think we are looking at fight of the year. Tactically, a lot of times the smaller guys don't get the credit they deserve, but tactically, we're going to be looking at the fight of the year. If it goes the full distance. And those are my thoughts. Drop your thoughts down below. As always, please like, please share, please subscribe to this channel.